Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 15 of the Hungry Fuel Podcast, the hungriest podcast in America. My name is Michael Patrick Buckley, and I'm here with my co-host, AJ Divka. We have a very, very, very extra special guest on our podcast today, Jenna Hathaway, and we are so excited to have her on. AJ, what's up, man? Jenna, what's going on?
Hey, feeling good. Yeah, I just want to do a quick little recap because I mentioned this, I think, on episode 1. But the way actually Jenna is a vital part of how Hungry People began. And back in 2020, after the Pranic Festival, we had about 9 or 10 people come and stay at my house, and Jenna was one of them. And I remember previously, like, I would talk to MP a lot, and he would talk to Jenna, and we were all like talking about similar things, you know, about like eating disorders and stuff like that.
And health related.
And Jenna, stuff. Yeah, and health and everything. But Jenna and I really weren't that close on Instagram. We would message a little bit, but then after she came and stayed with me and us three were talking more in person, I remember wanting to create a 3-way chat. I thought that was like, we were all talking about similar things. We're all like had experience watching like Durian Rider and Carbing Up and calorie deficiency and all these types of things, you know, how important is sleep and water and all that. And I just was trying to think of a name for this group. And I was like, all right, well, we're all not into starving ourselves. So it came to mind Hungry People. And previously for like 3 or 4 months, I remember saying to MP, like, we should have a podcast. We should start a podcast, blah, blah, blah. And he was never for it. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. He pushed it down the road. But then like after we started that group chat and Hungry People, after a little while, I'm like, that would be like the perfect name. And all three of us had discussed that for a long time. And I feel very, very blessed and honored to have Jenna on today. I mean, there would be no Hungry People without you, Jenna. And I really love you.
So cool. Yeah, I feel like the three of us really got each other through pandemic times.
No doubt.
Because it was so much like everyday talking and yeah, just really similar, I think, interest. Like we disagree with each other on things sometimes, but I feel like it's just that inclination to like talk about it and like explore topics. And I feel like none of us are hyper attached to like being right or just like the ego that can often like come about within health communities. Like we kind of have more of a playfulness with it. And I think that's a very special thing. So yeah, I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. Yeah, legit. Since the middle of 2020, is that about what it was?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's almost been nonstop every single day, voice messages, sending posts, sending all different kind of stuff to each other, you know, just learning from each other, getting better from each other, growing from each other, taking each other's perspectives and giving those perspectives to other people and teaching them too. And it's just, it's honestly been an honor, Jenna, to, and you too, AJ, just to be able to connect with you and learn from you. So thank you so much.
How many times have we each been in the position where we go to look at our phone and the other two have been talking like all day and the other one's like, all right, I have 3 hours like of catching up to do. Great. Of all these voice memos.
Yeah. There's been times
and during pandemic, it's like, oh, awesome, I have something to do.
Right.
But it can almost get overwhelming, but that's how interested we are in stuff. I mean, we could just go forever. So it's great to have it face to face and do it and record it and share it with everyone that's going to be watching this.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people like don't necessarily express like their opinions like so frequently like we do. I don't know. There's kind of like this, I don't know. I've just noticed it with people, like almost like a hesitancy where it's like, oh, I'm not an expert in this health topic or, you know, taken this program or whatever it is. And I feel like the three of us are just like, yeah, we've like done our self-study and like also experimented a lot on ourselves. And I feel like we all have, I mean, different levels in some ways, but just like a lot of self-awareness to how we feel with things and like have tried out a lot of things. And I think that's very unique because I feel like a lot of people are just hyper.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination of experience and research. And also we each just create a platform for each other to actually say what we think and not feel ashamed for it. So I think that trifecta creates like really good discussions because there's no limitations on it. And we're not only talking from a study, we're also talking from experience and vice versa.
Totally. Well, let's dive into it. You guys ready?
Yeah, I think
We're ready.
Yeah. So Jenna, when did you start getting into a lot of the health stuff?
Yeah, and how long have you been vegan? I don't even know. Or when did you start being vegan?
I think it was like 2016. For 1 month, I did like no smoking, no alcohol, just like not even whole foods, plant-based vegan. It was just like, I'm going to cut out animal products, and however that happens, it happens. So I did that for a month, and then it ended. It was kind of during like a finals period in school. And then the following year in 2017, I did the same thing. And I remember when I broke it, I felt so horrible. And a few weeks later, I found like Elise, who was super big into the raw movement, which I had no idea what raw was at that time. And yeah, I found this farm and then decided on kind of a whim. I had just graduated college and was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to go to Hawaii for 2 months and see what happens. And yeah, so many people just like made fun of me, like at the restaurant, like very playfully, just like trying to offer me like animal products, or just like being like, how could you just eat fruit, and not understanding it at all. And like my mind hadn't really shifted yet, so I kind of didn't have a lot of answers, but it was from a very ethical perspective at that time. And then it kind of just snowballed a lot. In 2018 was like the biggest year of transition, but I would say I've been into it since 2016.
So you said that when you broke, you noticed a big difference in how you felt. How about when you changed to it? How about when were you noticing that you felt better?
Yeah.
And also, is that farm Kanakiki?
Yeah, it was Kanakiki, yeah. Which I think they've closed at this point, just some like stuff going on there.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I felt not crazy physical differences because I wasn't really dealing with any health issues. That's not why I went into this, which I realized for most people, maybe not most, just a lot of people, it's very much, oh, I have this really intense health issue, and then it's this like crazy transformation or success story or whatever. But for me, it was definitely coming from like a more ethical place, and then coming from an energetic place. And actually in the beginning, I felt very tired, just like working on the land, being in a really humid climate, definitely wasn't eating enough. Like there was definitely subtle restriction going on, which I didn't really want to acknowledge at that time, but it definitely was present then. So I didn't feel like this crazy switch, but a few months into it, I remember I went on this trip out to like Zion National Park. We went to this place called Angel's Landing, which is like this crazy mountain with this chain on this like cliff essentially, and you have to like kind of walk up and like hold the chain, or there's like a possibility that you could fall. People have died, and I was like running up the mountain, and I was like, I have so much energy, like this is crazy. So that was like 3 months in that I really started feeling it. But yeah, it was more of like this spiritual awareness in myself where I was like, wow, I logically understood that like everything's alive, okay? But when you feel it and you're like, oh my gosh, like this food is literally living food, like that perspective of like the energy of the food, that's when my mind was just like, wow, life is totally different. Like I can't unsee this.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, just one thing. It's a really good quote that I heard from Harley, where it's like, the only things we truly know are the things we personally experience. And like you said, like you can't unsee it, you can't unfeel it. And I feel that way about a lot of different things, where I was never able to like fully understand until I experienced myself, even if I intellectually understood it in a way. Yeah. MP.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know AJ, he always speaks on his experience of was it like drinking the pineapple juice or something, and you had like this crazy energy and you're like, yeah, I have to run 2 miles or something. But even myself, I mean, I've experienced a plethora. If AJ, if you want to speak on that after, you can.
No, you're good.
But I mean, there's been a plethora of times when I've just felt that surge, that electricity, and you just feel so good and you feel so happy. You know, talk about a natural high. Like there have been times when I'm just like, I'm like in my room listening to music. Even now, I feel high as hell talking to you guys. But like you really do just feel so good, and you just have it, and you'll know when you feel that. So, but yeah.
Was it
Jenna.
lasting for you, Jenna?
Kind of first year. I definitely remember I was working in a job, like I'm from New York. I went back to New York City and was working in, this like camera rental house. And I really didn't like that job. And I started to drink coffee again, which I drink coffee currently, but I have a very different relationship to it now than I did 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago. And I was drinking the coffee because I was so dissatisfied in the job. And then I'd want cooked food for lunch and I would buy some and I would feel all this guilt and shame, like, no, like I really believe in raw, I want to do this. But it was really founded in essentially like not eating enough. And yeah, just forcing it too soon. Like even now it's like, I'm not raw, but I don't think that is like out of a realm of possibility for me. But I don't see those cooked foods in the same way. Whereas then it was like detrimental, where I was like, oh my gosh, I've just made a huge mistake. Like I really have to step away from this, and using words like this is an addiction, or, which it's like, I can see, but I don't think it tells the whole story. It's kind of narrow-minded in some ways.
Yeah, Jenna, how has your perspectives changed over the past couple of years, just from like being in the raw vegan community and even being on the farm and hearing what people say and their mindsets, and then really seeing the other viewpoints of it, how have your perspectives, just even of just like raw food and maybe even like cleaning out your body and stuff, how have those changed over the past, or since the beginning? How have those changed?
Yeah, I think in the beginning it was like magical. I remember one of the owners of the farm was talking to us and how he had some kind of like cyst or some internal malformity. Like I don't know what it was, and I don't think he necessarily like knew specifically what it was, but he did, I think, a 3-week water fast, and he was like, I felt on day 14 that it popped, and I was like, what? How did you do this? And this was coming from me from a perspective of, oh, if I do this, I'm going to have some crazy spiritual experience. And also I'll be able to be a smaller person like I was when I was young, and all this attachment to this past identity that I held. And so he kind of didn't realize the audience that he was talking to. And sure, it was really enchanting and like out of this world, and I wanted to experience something like that, like very different, and to push myself really hard. But he didn't take into account that like a lot of people have like these subtle forms of, disordered eating, and coming to a place like that, it's like it can be really present in that community, and like not really recognizing that maybe you're speaking to an audience that is really vulnerable and susceptible to the things you say. And it seems like, this magic pill of, oh my gosh, you're going to feel so much better. Even with juice fasting too, it's like the way that people talk about it, it's like, right, they say like, it's like a high, and it's like, but it's like, you can't sustain the high. And like, we've always talked about this, like with sustainable approaches, and like, how do you move at a pace that works for you, or it's like you're not always going to want to be like cleaning yourself out, or all of this.
Right. Well, it's also not even just if it's sustainable, in my opinion. It's also like some people are just worse off, even if it's for a few days, at doing it because it's not what they need, or it's counterproductive to their body's needs or their relationship with food. And it's like this multi-dimensional thing. And I feel as though it's so easy to slip into a state of back and forth. The swings just become so big. And then it's like, you create that really intense hunger, that one for food. And then you just beat yourself up because you think, oh, it's parasites, or it's just me being mentally weak. I feel like that's some of the worst parts about it, because then you think there's something wrong with you for needing to eat food. Some of us need to eat food. Actually, all of us do.
All of us.
And yeah, all of us do. And it's not a bad thing to be hungry. I mean, some people aren't as hungry as others, and they can maintain. And some people have faster metabolisms. I've said before on the podcast, my metabolism, I was told, is 5 times faster than a normal person. I mean, according to how fast I was processing the medication for my like when I was at the dentist. And you know, I don't think it's an end all be all thing, but it becomes really tricky when you live by these certain rules, because then you really separate yourself from listening to your body's needs. Like, okay, I am pretty thirsty right now, but I'm not going to drink water because I have to do a 10-hour daily dry fast, and you know, this, that, and the other. Or like, I don't want to eat late because I won't sleep good, but then you don't sleep good because you're hungry. And it just becomes really tricky because some people they should be eating less later in the day, for sure. They're not going to sleep as well. But you know, how many people are barely eating all day and then stop too early?
Yeah, I'm like the opposite. Recently, I've been eating like a huge meal before I go to bed.
Nice.
And that's just how my day's been going, you know. And I've been
and if you sleep though, if you sleep, that's good. You know, I just think that people that aren't sleeping, that's
no doubt.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. And also too, Jenna, something that AJ and I have also discussed is like, people, they'll go on these certain kind of fasts, like juice fast or water fasting, and they'll think that like, oh, I need this, but like really they probably don't. And they set these goals and these numbers that they shoot for, and then they end up hurting themselves when they don't even need that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course, drinking juice is good, but going on a 90-day juice fast when you have no health, you might have some health issues, but you don't really need to go on a 90-day juice fast. It's like, what's the point? So
even Dan, who's like, you know, all about detox all the time, when I talk to him about it, he's like, you're supposed to feel better and better and better and then have a little dip. But so many people are just falling off the edge of the fucking earth, and they think it's a good sign, and it's really scary and it's really sad.
Right.
And just to MP brought up the pineapple juice earlier. I just want to clarify for people. I think it's a good comparison to what people are doing and what I did then. This was before I was ever into fasting or juice fasting or fruit cleansing. I was raw till 4, but I had inflammation in my wrist, throbbing to the point where I'd be like in pain, hard to do, focus on anything else. And I would notice every time I ate, it would just get worse. So I got the Lake Woods, the pineapple and the mango, and I drank them all day. I had at least 2,000 calories because I had way less pain. And by day 3, all the pain was gone. And I had like this crazy surge of energy that he was talking about. And then I stopped fasting because I was like, okay, like I feel good now and I want to eat and whatever. And I feel like someone might have like an issue like toe fungus or, you know, headaches or whatever. And they're not listening in terms of like, I'm going to do it because it's making it better. They're doing it hoping that it cures it, even if it doesn't. I feel like those relationships are so different because you're not listening anymore. You're just setting arbitrary goals.
And it's so tricky too, because it's like, okay, if we just say like these phrases of like, eat as much as you want or listen to your body, it creates no context. And we kind of like live in that world of, oh, I just want the headline and like the catchphrase of like, oh, what's my thing? What's my perspective? But even with that phrase of like, listen to your body, it's like, if you are someone that has grown up eating, you know, lots of fast food, lots of takeout food, then in some ways it's like listening to your body is eating those foods. Is it bad? No, it's just like, that's what your norm is. And then, you know, all these health issues come up and arise, and it's like, but I was listening to my body. And it's almost like this disconnect of really understanding what that means, like on some deeper levels of like, you know, once you start having more fruit, you realize like, oh my gosh, like these, you know, really cooked or oily foods, like they do make me feel dehydrated. Am I going to be scared of them? No. Like, am I going to say it's a cheat meal? It's like, again, all the language, the mentality around it. But even with like body awareness, it's like, there's so much context to it. And I feel like, especially in this age of like Instagram and what's your brand, everyone's trying to like create these shortened versions of what they think. And it's like, no, we have to like dig in so much.
Right. Yeah, I actually wanted to touch on something. I forget who I was talking to, but they might be a high school football coach, or they knew someone was in it, or they played in high school. But they were just talking about how they're like telling these players like, hey, if you eat McDonald's before games and that's like what you do, and your body's used to McDonald's, then you should probably eat that before a game so that you perform well, you know? But if you eat other foods, let's say for whatever reason, I mean, nobody's in high school on a fruit-based diet. I mean, you could assume that at least. But like if someone is more accustomed to eating more whole foods or more fruit, then do that before your games and sporting events. Just because like, let's imagine the kid who's on the McDonald's diet and you say like, hey, you should be eating fruit. Okay, well, he eats fruit and now his stomach hurts. He feels like shit. He has to poop all of a sudden and he can't play later in the game. Or he might be able to, but he's like, he's at unease. So there was something that you said that made me think of that.
Yeah, like even with that, it's like those foods sometimes can be so demonized. Like if we just like run with like the McDonald's example,
right?
It's like when you're young, those foods often don't even make you feel so bad.
Right.
Like it's not necessarily this crazy reaction. It's like tuning into those subtle things of like, oh yeah, like my stomach does feel a lot heavier, or like, oh yeah, I do notice that like it's a little bit harder for me to breathe when I eat these kinds of foods versus these kinds of foods.
Right.
But like you're a young person, I feel like for the most part, so many kids just like eat it and they move on. Like they're not
they don't even know
focused on like, well, how does it make me feel? And then issues arise as you get older and you're like, oh, now I actually have to be more conscientious.
Right.
So it's like, it's tricky because it's like, do I think McDonald's is something that we should really ever be eating? No, I don't. But do I think it's always going to create this like short-term fast reaction of like, oh, bad poison? Like for a lot of people, no. Because if it was really that bad, or I'd like to think that they wouldn't be eating it. I mean, it's like,
right. Well, what about the one guy who did, what was it, 30 days on McDonald's only?
That documentary?
Yeah, was it 30 or 90 days or something crazy?
Supersize Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Neil Bernard is in that movie. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Oh, is he really?
Whoa.
Yeah, and he's the doctor that like keeps an eye on him. But I think that's a really good point. I think that things are demonized to a ridiculous degree. I think Rain is an actual good example of like being able to eat kind of junkier style of foods, but he pays attention to a lot of parameters of health overall. And it's like the thing is, starvation is really bad for you. And if you have kids are really tricky. Like if you're like, hey, I'm not letting my kids eat any processed food, any meat, and you limit the kid, even if you give them enough food or whatever, it's very tricky. And I feel as though it's dangerous. And a lot of kids are almost better off eating as much junk as they want because then they actually get enough, whether that means, the nutrients or the calories or whatever, the fats, the essential things. And it's kind of scary to me. Like if I were to have a kid, I'm all for a vegan diet, but it would feel as though I would have some real internal worries about making sure they have enough of what they need. Just because like so many people switch to vegan when they're fully adults. And then it's like, okay, like it helped me so much. I got rid of inflammation, but they're fully developed. Right. And it's not that I don't think it can't be done. Of course, you can raise kids on a vegan or plant-based diet. I completely agree. I would just have some kind of like emotional worry of like, are they getting what they need? And for example, like there's kids out there that if you just gave them McDonald's, they would thrive so much better than they are because of how restricted they are in their eating. Maybe they get filled up from their watermelon or their rice, but it doesn't mean they actually got enough, So it's tricky to me. I would rather if my kids were vegan, I would be giving them chicken nuggets and vegan burgers and just like making sure they eat fries and Frosties. Like these things I feel as though really come in handy, depending upon the kid, of course.
So it's almost like they're supplemental to the diet. So it's like you have your main way of eating, your fruit, your vegetables, your potatoes, your lentils, beans, greens, whatever. But then, we can also add in some veggie burgers and vegan chicken nuggets and tofu.
Like a kid isn't going to want to eat 10. Oh, sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
What was that last part? I was just going to say a kid doesn't want to eat, 10 bananas probably.
Yeah, right.
He's like, hey, I want the pancakes.
Right.
And I feel like people, what's that?
If the kid from like birth is eating that way, then maybe those foods are like, what is that? That's not how we eat. We get attached to the pattern. But also if there's like the excitement around it, like, oh, it's birthday cake and this is special, then I'm sure there's an appeal because like they want to feel that emotion and just like be a part of it, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, the smell and taste and the calorie density is definitely a thing. I feel as though for America, it's like people that are overweight. Of course, we're looking at lessening the density so that they can shed the weight and get filled still and all these things. But in this community, very easily it dives the other way. And it's almost like you want to get more calories for less bites because it becomes exhausting to have to just like eat all day. And like,
Yeah,
it's like the opposite of the pleasure trap. It's like you want to work your way into the pleasure trap.
Well, that's what like people from the like animal based movement will say is that like, oh, well, I can eat a piece of meat and it's triple the amount of calories. I don't have to eat as much as someone who's eating 2 cans of beans for dinner, you know? So
right.
That's essentially their argument, which, okay, whatever. But, and there's also consequences to that too, you know? So they both have their ups and downs. But
do you guys know Jackson Foster?
No.
Jackson Foster. I know AJ Dive. I don't know Jackson Foster though.
Well, he used to come to Woodstock. He's like Plant Triotic. That was his name.
Oh, yeah.
And he went like whole food plants based and do raw till 4 and just became really restrictive with his eating. And then at some point he's like, hey, I'm not trying to reverse heart disease. I'm not trying to reverse cancer. Like I don't have to, like, I can go out and have a bean burger. I can go out and have like French fries.
Right.
And it just brings me back to what I was thinking earlier. I forgot to bring up with the whole like raising kids thing is Doug Lau, when he talks about raising kids, the main thing you want to focus on is that they're just eating enough, but also the one thing you do want to restrict is like dairy intake, just in case that they could trigger some kind of autoimmune reaction with type 1 diabetes, but they're not building any kind of like disease to where it's going to truly affect them unless they're a special case. This is of course statistical. So of course some people are affected, but overall we don't have to worry necessarily. And then it depends upon the person going forward. But I just feel as though the less restrictions, especially for kids, the better the outcome. And even with people who are just underweight, I feel like it's the same thing.
Right. I mean, just imagine telling your kid like, hey, son, you can't have this. Like, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to want it even more. They're going to find a way to get it. They're going to go all incognito and, you know, so, that's why it's like, it's definitely good to have some leeway. And even with your own self, it's like, oh, if you restrict yourself from something, I feel like you think about it more than you have before then, you know? So it's almost like better off just, you don't have to go crazy and indulge in it so much, but small dose it, you know?
Right. Jenna, do you find that, because you've been involved in this community, at least for Woodstock, as long as me, I think, like, did you start going to Woodstock in 2018? Okay. And like, now that you've had like what 3 or 4 years now to be involved and see what's going on, is there anything that you're just you used to be really attached to that now you see it in other people and it kind of is like it hits you hard, whether it's relatable or whether it's sad to you or whether it's like you wish that people could just see it in a way that would save them a lot of time and sadness and effort and health? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, don't sugarcoat it either. Don't sugarcoat it.
I won't. I think for me, it's really about language. Like, to answer this question, but also pull in what you're talking about with like children, is like, you know, eating foods that are more processed or more attached to like various corporations. It's like how to do that and how to approach those behaviors with like healthy, what does healthy even mean? Healthy language, instead of it being like, oh, this is a cheat meal. It's like, oh, we eat these foods like at certain times, you know, or just to kind of make it this neutral choice or behavior, instead of it being so loaded for the child of like, oh, this is, you know, something that I really shouldn't do. Like, we're cheating on something, you know. I really am not into that language. And then I think it really is present in, you know, raw fruitarian community. It's super present at Woodstock. Like, I always say, like, everyone's kind of parroting the same ideas and like the same words of saying like toxic and poison and I'm trying to think of other one. Oh, acidic, you know, all of, and then
mucus
it's like
forming.
Yes. And if you actually ask people, like being like, well, what how is acid formed in the body? Or like, a really great example, which I've definitely said this before, but it's like, I didn't actually understand the chemistry that I was kind of positioning myself to understand, was lemons. Like my dad would say, but aren't lemons really acidic? Like, or people will say like, oh, pineapple is really acidic for me. And I would always be like, yeah, but the way that the body processes it is alkaline. And for some people, that answer is enough. But when I actually look into the words that I'm saying, it's complete garbage. Like, I actually don't know what I'm even saying. Or like
Right.
when people say, oh yeah, like these foods are poisonous, potatoes are mucus forming. It's like, so tell me the process of that. How do you know that?
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
you read it in a book. Maybe you heard someone else say it, but like, do you actually understand the concept that you're claiming to understand by just like saying these words that other people say?
Mhm.
And a lot of the time, I don't think that's true. And I think that's not only present in raw vegan world. Like, yeah, sure, it is about those words and like about food, but everyone does it all the time with various subjects, like claiming to know more than they do and just kind of saying the words that other people say.
Mhm.
So that's my answer. Just like language is really,
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that two things off of what you just said. I feel like the people that are making those claims, it's either because, like you said, they've adopted it from someone else. They've adopted it from Robert Morse or some kind of plant-based doctor or any of these things. But the other thing is like people, some of them experience it. So it's like, they say, oh my God, potatoes are so mucus forming. And then their experience was they cut out potatoes and they started eating, whatever. And they just had like, okay, my sinuses cleared after 10 years and I can like breathe well and whatever. So I feel like they're kind of mixing those two up. And I find that I worry more about the first one, where it's just people are just accepting, this is how it is. Like meat is only bad, starch is only bad, fruit is only bad, whatever it is. And that, like, putting themselves in that box, it's just so limiting. I remember listening to an interview. It was what's his name? What's the guy's name that we want to have on? He's like so carnivore now. Not Matt Blackburn.
Drew Morg.
Yeah, he was interviewing Megan, Hawaii Megan. Do you know her name, Jenna?
Oh, I don't.
She's
remember.
like big friends with Arnold. Anyway, she was talking about like how she was so hungry, or she was like so sick. She's doing like the celery juice and she's doing fruit all day and she's taking these supplements. And then her boyfriend was like, "Hey, if there's no guilt attached to any of this, what would you want to eat right now?" And she was like, "A cheeseburger." Like, if I'm actually listening to myself. And she went and ate it. And she said whether it's psychologically or physically, she felt better. But being able to give yourself that much, because like you said earlier, yes, if we just listen to ourselves, of course, like then it's like, give me all the drugs and the alcohol and the sex and and all the fast food.
Yeah.
And like give it to me, give it all to me, because it's all fun and exciting. It doesn't mean it's actually listening to what you really know is good for yourself too. And that's a fine line to walk sometimes. And I feel as though, Jenna, you and MP are really good at that. I feel as though you guys are really able to, sit down and really be able to decipher what your body or what your mind, like the difference between that is. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely struggled with that a lot.
Well, I feel the term listening to your body, or the phrase listening to your body, is so ambiguous. And it's funny because when I buy coconut date rolls, like that's all I want is coconut date rolls. Once I eat the last one, I don't want them anymore. Done. That's it. Well, it's sugar and fat too, but it's actually, I think they're low in fat. So even still, this past week, I had pasta with sauce, and then I had some, I call them soy balls, but they're vegan meatballs. I like to say soy balls. That's what they are. They're made of soy. They're not made of meat. So, and the first night I had them, they were delicious. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want it again. After I had it that night, I didn't want it anymore. I was like, I didn't have it, so I didn't want it,
Right.
So I feel that's a big part of it, and if there's people out there who are like, if they buy something and they can't stop eating it, and it's bad for them, or at least they think it's bad for them, or they have an addiction to it, I mean, maybe stop buying it if you can, or you have the capacity to do that. But just the whole phrase of listening to your body, it's honestly kind of ridiculous. And I think there definitely could be other issues that are going on inside yourself that really isn't just like a craving. Like even still when we had Josh on, he's like, oh, that could just be a blood sugar issue, you know? And just honestly, I remember the whole parasite fucking bullshit. Like, I don't even want to talk about that, you know, but
yeah, that gets like hyper like psychological too.
Yeah, like how do you know? It's just like, it's just total, not that it's bullshit. Like, okay, cool. Maybe we do a lot of parasites. I'm sure we do. You know, maybe they do eat some of the food inside of us that it comes down, but like, I'm not gonna let that ruin my life and get this like crazy, this crazy mind about it. You know,
episode 16, and we're gonna detox the parasites at MP.
how to detox parasites.
Yeah, MP, going on that point of like not buying something, I actually don't know if I agree with that. Like when I was in college, and I definitely was restricting and like going back and forth between like working in this nice restaurant and having access to really beautiful food and eating it, and then having all this guilt and then trying to restrict what I was eating.
Yeah.
I would always want peanut butter, and I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't buy it. And then I wouldn't eat. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to have peanut butter. And I'd like have a spoonful or two, like eat peanut butter, like out of a jar. Yeah. Now I can't even imagine doing that. But it's like, that was coming from a place of restriction.
Right.
And I feel like if you can't, like, there's literally no food that is in my home, or there's no food that exists that if I had it in my home, I'd be like, I'm out of control with it. Because it's just like, it's all a choice. Like, I don't know, I think this kind of back and forth nature that comes along with like that level of wanting something is then you think you have to pull back so hard. Right. Instead of like, well, when I want it, I'll just have it. Right. And then we'll see what happens. And like really connected, does that make me feel good? Like what you said with like the soy balls and just being like, yeah, okay, I had them, then I didn't want them anymore.
Yeah. That's so two thoughts came to my mind here. The first thought was something Jen Hawk said. I think it was her own personal experience where she was saying that I forget what kind of nut butter it might've been almond butter or something, but she said that like, oh, I don't want to buy it anymore because not anymore, but like at least limit it, because when she has it, that's like all she wants to eat is almond butter, you know. But I can totally see your perspective on that and how, yeah, you know, if like that's all you're thinking about and you're just craving it so much, maybe you should go get it and just like loosen up the restriction, and then find a way to slowly, if you can do that, slowly work it into your diet in a healthy manner, you know. Another thought that came to mind was I had a buddy back in college. And he said that like once a month he would, I mean, I don't know if he like did this every month, but this is what he told me at least. He said that he would get a case of Oreos and he would just eat all these Oreos as much as he can. And he would feel like complete shit after. Feel like a shit. So he got, so like everyone wants Oreos, you know, we all want Oreos. He eats the Oreos. He feels like shit. He's like, I'm not doing that again. Why would I do that? So now it's like he's telling his body that he doesn't want the Oreos anymore, you know? So I know it's like kind of a weird perspective, but
he would do this instead of just being like, oh, I want an Oreo, I'll have two.
You know, he's like, I'm just going to eat them until I get sick of them. So he'll just like eat a ton of them. And he's like, oh, like I feel like shit after. I know that I shouldn't be eating this. And this dude was shredded too. He was actually, he actually got selected in the MLB draft, but he didn't go. But he was an athlete. That's
in a way, it's like, is it really the act of even wanting the Oreo, or is it the ritual around eating that many Oreos? It's like, that's a massive dopamine hit of like, oh, I'm not going to have this for a certain amount of time. Right. And then when I start to want it again, I'm going to maybe hold back. And then it's like this huge release of like, oh, I can finally have them. Right. And then it's like a ridiculous amount of something where it's like, we can all agree that eating like a case of Oreos is just like a little strange.
Yeah, totally. I think
Rain might agree that it's good.
I feel like he did that just to like tell his body like, hey, I don't want these, but like maybe it is some sort of disordered eating pattern that he had. You know?
I don't even know if it's disordered. It's just like, recognize that you're creating this like exciting ritual around it. It's like you could same thing. You know, you're laying, or like, I mean, and I definitely do this sometimes of like, oh, like I ran, I think 2 days ago. I hadn't run since like July, and then I hadn't really run seriously until since like January or February. And then a few days ago, I was like, oh, I'm kind of scared to run. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to make this like really fun and like intense for myself and play music that I love and just like push 1 mile run and like see what happens.
Nice.
And it was like exciting.
Yeah.
So it's, in the same way, it's like the event of eating the Oreos is exciting. It sounds
right.
Like,
yeah. It's almost like, right. It's almost like he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But even though the effects afterwards are not ideal, it's
yeah.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Great points there, Jenna. Yeah. Awesome.
I feel as though that with restriction, I agree and disagree with both of you. I think there's a time and a place, and I think there's like massive like overdoing it. I mean, there's certain people, I don't believe every person can create like the most healthy relationship with food. I think that it's an amazing tool and it will benefit you. But I feel as though there definitely is people as well who are just much better off not having it in their surroundings. And like, I find that I buy more and more into the personality stuff. I am believing it more and more. And just the more I learn about it. And I feel as though, you know, some people confuse certain things. Like they might think, oh, this person is unstable, when really they've adopted something with their high level or hyper level of conscientiousness. Like I would say I stand by that. I think both of you would be labeled as stable people, and you're very like even keel. And but Jenna, like you found yourself putting yourself in tough spots with eating and eating disorders and things. And I feel as though someone could look at that and be like, well, look, she used to be unstable, or she used to have this way of, you know, eating. And we've all been there actually. But I feel as though having that belief, that hyper awareness in like, okay, this is good, this is bad, that led to a less balanced state. But overall, I feel like as you go on and you realize like, okay, I'm living in reality, not like what these other people are making it out to be, that it swings back into the middle a little easier. And that's not like a criticism of you at all, and either of you, but I feel as though when you guys get back to your state of norm, I feel like it's easier to stand in that strength and be like, I believe everyone can get here. And I have a hard time believing that. I do feel as though there are certain people who need healthy boundaries, but more boundaries in place in order for them to succeed. And that could be with alcohol. It's like, you know,
I thought of that.
we could try to like get them to, you know, have a little bit, but at the end of the day, there's people out there who just need to have none.
Right. Well, AJ, I mean, something that you've taught me.
Tricky. Food is just so tricky. But
something that you've taught me is that like it's good to be disciplined with your eating. It's good to be disciplined with, I mean, all aspects of your life. You know, you don't want to just say like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm just doing whatever I want, you know, because once you start doing that, then that's when it starts going downhill. Like it's good to actually say, you know what, I'm not going to eat that, you know, or I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. And for that, you're going to hopefully be better, you know, and maybe even influence other people to not do X, Y, and Z if X, Y, and Z are bad, you know, drugs.
Yeah, it's good to have standards, but taking it to such a high level, that's not productive or even healthy.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah,
but I feel as though,
no, you go.
No, I just feel as though the blend of it all is where like the most success can come from. Because I feel as though I do think that people need to really figure out why their relationship with food is what it is. And I think everyone can benefit from that for sure. Because a lot of people don't know why they're doing what they're doing, whether it is emotional or physical or, you know, social. A lot of these things, like I know for like certain people in my family, if they're around stuff, they're going to do it. And if they're not, they don't do it. Yeah. So if they're in that situation less, they're just better off. And implementing, okay, why that is just another, it's almost like another, you know, level up, another, what's it called? Like another, I'm trying to think of the analogy. It's just another thing stacked in your favor.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question to that. I mean, should we really be asking ourselves why we're doing something? Like, should we be questioning it? You know? And in my opinion, I think like, yes, to an extent we should be, but I also think like, oh, that could create more issues down the line because you're just like, you used to start thinking about it so much, even with like all this health stuff and eating timing and what I'm eating and what's in the food. And even still, like, I'm at Costco and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get that because I'm going to limit that because it has X, Y, and Z in it. But maybe next time I'll buy it. I'm not going to buy it now. Even like if I did buy it, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And then I go the next time, I'm like, oh, like I want that. But I'm like, you know what? I'll let it go for now. Maybe next time I'll get it, which is like, isn't that big of a deal, But yeah, I feel like once I started questioning everything, it started when I'm like, am I doing it right? Or am I feeling right? Is this how it should be? So like, and I feel so many people, they just kind of they just do whatever they want. It's like, oh, I need a coffee. They go buy a coffee. Oh, I need an energy drink. They go buy an energy drink. Oh, I'm sleeping in today. Oh, I'm hungry. I'm eating now. They're not like, it's 9:40, it's 9:59. Now it's 10. Now I can eat, like they're not like that. They're just kind of going with the flow, which cool. That's great. So yeah, like I think it's great to ask why, but I don't think most people do ask why, like they're not questioning. I mean, they might be, but I don't think they are, so maybe they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fine line. And just like a lot of people within the health community will say, or particularly like detox or raw vegan, fruitarian, whatever word you want to use. It's like, oh yeah, I'm detoxing now so I can build later, like break it down to build it up or whatever. And yeah, whether or not you like agree with the perspective, it's like, there's an awareness there where it's like there are phases. So I think in awareness, the same thing exists where it's like there are phases where you need to be asking why. Whereas like you then get out of that phase where it's like, I don't need to ask why anymore. Like I know what my whys are. That part of my brain now is like turned off because I'm kind of coasting on what my awareness level is now. Maybe in 3 years, I'll have some kind of shift and I'll be like, oh, I need to reevaluate why I'm doing certain things or why I'm living a certain way. But it's
Right.
like, once you kind of get the answer or get into like the routine of being like, I don't know, I feel like in the beginning, like, let's say like take body awareness or like what's called like interoceptive awareness, which is like, yeah, just awareness of physical self in like various ways. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just like body awareness.
Yeah. I've never heard of that word.
That it's really, really interesting. I'll send you some stuff on it, but it's like, it's very easy for me to be like, okay, how do I feel? Okay, I know.
Right.
Whereas in the past it was like, ooh, like, how do I feel? Like, how do I feel? Like, is this going to give me a stomach ache? Like, am I experiencing like a dry throat right now? Like, and it was a little bit more like, I really had to tap into it. Whereas you get to the point where it's just like, okay, just another thing. It's like asking yourself, am I tired? It's like, okay, am I tired? Okay, go to bed,
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I mean, that's really also in this day because most people don't actually.
Yeah. I mean, everybody wants to stay up. Everyone wants to stay up late.
I feel as though that with the phases, I completely agree. And I feel as though I've had the swings. Like I almost was so resistant to detox for a while, despite having issues that I kind of needed to address with how I was eating, just stuffing myself like a madman and just like having such shitty results. And I resisted detox so hard, or just trying to implement something other than carving up for so long, that I swung eventually into detox so hard. And then I swung out of it and ate a bunch of crap and refed bad. And I feel like the phase I'm at now, even if I eat something that's so exciting and so stimulating, I don't find myself having to do that until like I'm gorged to the point where I'm, on the floor. And I feel as though I'm finally more of a balanced swing and just like, okay, yeah, I know that's not true. I know that doesn't work, etc.
Nice. That's great, AJ.
Yeah, also going back to something that you were talking about a little bit before, I think it was kind of with child stuff. Like you made a comment being like, oh yeah, like someone could go raw when they're 20 or 30 or like limiting.
Right, more developed. Yeah,
more
right.
developed. This is like a conversation actually that I think I'm really curious what you guys think about this, because there are some people on Instagram that I follow. Oh, and you like sent us that photo, I think, MP, of like that guy who was like pretty ripped, like saying like, oh, I'm vegan, and people being like, oh, you're on steroids. And he's like but I'm not.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's really interesting when you see people who have like grown up on animal products and it's like they have muscle and then they transition to fruitarian and I feel like their body fat just drops, but it's
Right.
like that muscle was built on a totally different diet,
Right.
but now your ideology has shifted and you're like fruit is the only way, and it's like kind of this like ideological swing of like, oh, it has to be one perspective or the other, and it can't
Right.
just be like, oh yeah, like I did build my body in certain ways on this, but now fruitarianism is working for me, or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that a lot of people come into this, they already have some muscle, and then it might even get better as the time goes on, whether they do just a whole foods plant-based diet or just doing vegan or whatever they're doing. I can say from my experience, I came into it and I was doing a lot of fruit, and I feel like my gains in the gym, just like what I was doing, like calisthenics workouts, I feel like they did kind of increase. And then I started juice fasting and I lost like all this muscle and all this weight, and I had like no energy, and I stopped working out for like 3 months. And then recently I have been like, not recently, I mean, yes, recently, but like over the past year and a half, 2 years, I've still been just working on maintaining that muscle and building it back up. So I feel like from my standpoint, like, yeah, what I'm eating now, like, okay, yes, of course, beforehand, like I was a beast. I know I sent pictures to AJ, and I think I might send stuff to you. Like I was big. I mean, I was huge. Like I was an
like a
athlete.
fucking gorilla.
Yeah. So like there's muscle, like I have the muscle, it's in me, and I definitely have built it primarily early on in my life, high school and college, while eating essentially whatever I wanted, eating a high protein diet for sure. But like recently, over the past 2 years, after I broke down my body, I have been building it back up, like using plant foods only. So I definitely think it's going to depend on case to case, but I do think a lot of people they'll say like, oh, like you said, Jenna, oh, it's the fruit. Like I'm so ripped because of this fruit. Like, no, you built that earlier.
No
You built that
context
before.
give it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why are you like, you might not be lying, but I mean, you kind of are lying to yourself about it, that it's like, it's not necessarily the fruit. It was what you were doing beforehand, but the fruit allowed your body to maybe get rid of some inflammation and lose some of the excess weight and body fat. And then now it's like, wow, your results are better, So yeah.
Yeah, I think that
I
think losing that inflammation is a big part of like MP. You said you like started eating more fruit and everything, and you were like stronger. And I feel like what isn't paid attention to is how like you will recover really, really fast. But can you sustain, or can you rebuild on that way?
Right.
And I think that
long-term
fruit diet is probably the hardest to build on, but I do think you can maintain on it not too badly. Like it's not it's so impossible or so hard. I think maintaining is so much easier and such a different topic than actually building up.
Right. Well, even still, when I was doing a ton of that fasting, we had our alumni weekend. This was 2 years ago, and I'm like raw vegan. I'm like, I'm not going there looking like a skinny little thumbtack. Like I'm gonna I don't care about the fat. I don't care. And I was like just eating a ton, eating lots of salads, some fat, but I definitely was just up my calories, and I put the weight back on. And I remember having people be like, oh, I thought you were gonna look like super skinny, but you actually look pretty good. I was like, thank you. So like, yes, it's definitely possible to do it on a raw vegan, after you have detoxed your whole entire life away and your hair falls out. But but like but there's definitely sustainable ways around doing it all,
Right.
So
I think it brings it back to also like some sort of balanced approach. I think balance is kind of annoying topic, because it's like, what is balance?
I feel like people hate balance too. They hate it.
It's not exciting.
They don't. Yeah.
It's so lame. You want to be part of a side.
Yeah, right.
Well, because then it's like, and that's super big in, this whole community too, of like belonging and the identity and like having it be so attached. Like I remember I was like, in Hawaii in like January, and I like posted some photos of like me eating like sweet potatoes and
How dare you?
maybe I did like Thai food or something, but I was like, oh, like I remember how even a year prior to that, or maybe a little more, but like in 2018, when I would see people who I thought were raw, like post cook food, I'd be like, oh,
Right.
and now it's just like, yeah, just the need to stick to this one thing.
Right. This one ideal.
Yeah, it's just, there's so much more ease. And then I think it's even more special, like today, for instance, today I've only had fruit, like, whoa, crazy. But it's like, I'm not even really, it's like, I'm aware of it, but it's like, I'm not like, oh, and today I've only eaten fruit. Like I'm back to it.
Yeah, right.
Only had fruit today. Okay. Like I feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tomorrow
but I think
might be different.
Too, it's like, especially like another thing actually with Woodstock that I've noticed is like people who have only been there, it's their first year, maybe it's their second year. It's so much like, are you raw? Like,
yeah, right.
And like this kind of hyper focus on it. And then I think the longer you're there, it's like, I just want to like connect with people who want to take care of themselves. It kind of doesn't even matter the way that you're doing it to me. It's just like, oh yeah, there's that intentionality. And like you could look at too, like before you were talking a little bit about like discipline and everything, and like kind of saying, yeah, I think that's good to have. You own a business, you're an athlete, you're not just like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna go on a run today, or oh yeah, I think I'm gonna reach out to my clients today, or whatever. It's just like,
no, it's what you do.
No, you have a plan.
Yeah.
So how do you have the plan without it feeling like it's oppressive and overwhelming? It's like, if I owned a 7-figure business right now, I'd be like, holy shit, what am I doing?
Right.
But it's the same thing of people who've like been raw for 6 months and then they're talking about breatharianism, and it's like, yeah, okay, like I think we can learn some interesting things from that perspective. But that's like, if we're creating a hierarchy, like that is absolutely like elite, unearthly, you're transcending physical. Like,
right.
Do I think some people have done it? Yeah, I do. But in the ways that people say or how it's idealized, it's like,
yeah, right.
I think the disciplines actually respect it when you have results too. So it's like, oh, you eat a whole food plant-based diet, you drop 20 pounds, and you have more color in your face, or you have more energy and whatever. It's like there's so much respect. Yeah, looking good, Jenna. Or like oh, you're an athlete, and you're going to bed at 8 p.m. because you're waking up to train really hard and you're the fittest you've ever been. There's so much respect to it. But when it's like your results are flimsy, you're emotional, you don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. Like when things are falling apart around you, but you're still like, I have to do that. Then it just looks bad on you. And it probably isn't the healthiest relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think more than just like detoxing or cleaning your body out and like just that kind of mindset, there's just so much more to health than that, and I know AJ and I would definitely want to speak on this a lot more. And Jenna, if you have anything to add, but like, is your hair thick? The color in your face, are your nails growing? Like sometimes my nails just grow so fast, and I don't know, maybe that's a good thing that they grow so fast. Do you have muscle? What's your body fat like? Like it's more than just, oh, I got the mucoid plaque out of my body, I'm healthy now. Like no, like still you'll still look at these people and they look like deathly ill, and it's like, dude, you're clearly missing something from your diet. There's something that's not there. It's not all about like, oh, I'm just gonna just drink this, that's all I'm doing. I mean, still, what's the student, who's the juice feasting guy, the Ali guy?
Oh yeah, a student of light is his name.
Student of light?
That's Jeremy.
Yeah, that's
Student
Jeremy.
of light's Jeremy.
Oh, yeah. You're right, it is.
Yeah, because I was gonna say student of light too, but it's not. It's
flavors of
Flavors of light. Yeah. Like even like his perspective, like I don't follow him, but even like his perspectives, I just don't really agree with him, you know? Like I feel you're better off just like just giving your body what it needs. And your body definitely wants to eat, and your body wants nutritious, dense foods. And just one more statement, AJ. And like, yeah, it's cool. It's good to have, I can't stop talking. It's good to have, it's good to have those time periods. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Like it's, if you want to like clean out, but I mean, you got to maybe even do more building and nourishing than cleaning. So,
right. Yeah. And there's this amazing Harley video back in the day, and he points to a mountain and he's like, you know, all these raw food gurus, you know, David Wolf and blah, blah, blah. If they had to, if your life depended on them getting to the top of that mountain, would you put it on them or me? Because I don't think they could even walk to the top without like, losing their shit. And it's like, he does have a good point, especially when he was raw. He was like, hey, look, you got to have enough energy to actually be fit and be like, a lot of these people are like, I don't need to sleep because I'm raw. It's like, sleep's so important. You need to make sure you get enough sleep. And if you only sleep in 2 hours, there's a problem, in my opinion. And I feel like that's him saying that, and him saying like, you're supposed to be able to get into a fight with your partner and not fall apart. Like all these things that I feel as though either our generation or all these people in the detox, it's like, they don't handle the same stresses and pressures as our parents did, or you know, these people who actually can eat enough food. And it becomes really tricky. Like you should be able to have a business or work or have structure or go to school, and it shouldn't be every little thing like, I got beeped at in traffic, now I have to go to therapy for 2 weeks or I have to like fast because I shouldn't have anxiety. I should have to like fast that away, when you don't even know what the real cause is. You're just speculating.
Right.
So much speculation. Yeah.
Right. Great points, AJ.
It's tricky.
Yeah, I feel like the mountain comment too is really interesting, because it's like this kind of like on off switch of like almost like detaching from survival mode. Like I don't know if you guys know of the shaking or like I think it's called I forget what it's for, but like tapping. And like how animals, if they were to get in some kind of like traumatizing situation, they would literally shake. And like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in like a car accident or something like really like frightening happened and you'd feel like your hands were shaking. But it's like most animals are able to like process the intensity or like act and run up the mountain and just do it. Whereas us, it's like I feel like we hold in so much, and it's like we're not actually allowing ourselves to like shake things off. And so then it builds up. So then it becomes, someone beeps at you and your reaction time is crazy, because it's like you literally can't hold it in anymore. And you know, like with sleep stuff, like people being like, oh yeah, I'm on this fast and I'm only getting 2 hours of sleep. That's all I need, whatever, 3 hours. It's like, I think it's because your body is under so much subtle stress that even though you feel like you're okay in this present moment, it's like so much is building up and so much is unknown that's going on within you, and you're not really confronting it. You're kind of just detaching away from it or like pushing it down. And then it like bubbles over, or then the fast ends and you know, it's like you go to the other end. So.
Right. Yeah, I actually just put a story. I reposted something on my Instagram today. It was about like eating carbs and how like people will feel tired after eating carbs. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of carbs make you tired because they bring down stress hormones and then get you to feel how you really feel with just your thyroid, energy, metabolism in your hand, you know? And honestly, I genuinely do believe that. I do believe that like when we're not eating, we're just like high off the stress and we're just high off our body keeping us alive, you know? And I'd rather give my body the fuel. And I do believe in that. I do believe in like carbon up and giving your body the fuel. And yeah, to an extent, like there's going to be times when like maybe you didn't eat that much that day or whatever happened. You're so busy, you haven't had time to really get it in. But that's why it's important to eat. So
yeah, I think that post is I agree with it, but I also disagree. It's like so oversimplified. I think that like they could just as easily be dehydrated and eat that food and feel like, oh man, I'm so exhausted, but they really just were so dehydrated. But I think that, yeah, a lot of the I remember when I started carbing up and it's like I could feel how exhausted I was. And that's really important. I feel like a lot of us don't even know. We have like this frantic exhaustion, but we don't actually feel like. And I love feeling the like just being able to like clonk out if I want to.
Right.
It feels so much better than having like this nervous type of energy all the time.
Well, it's almost like we'd rather have that, or would rather be like trying to force yourself to get to bed when you can't go to bed. You know,
forcing
like
yourself to go to bed is like the worst feeling. I hate. I think it's one of the worst things.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it kind of sounds similar in a way to like demonizing food, like the way that we like demonize feeling tired too. It's like we're so focused on like how productive can my day be, how can I attach my worth to the things I do and what I produce and, you know, everything that I get done. And so it's like, oh, I'm tired, like it's 3 p.m. and I'm feeling this kind of lull, like I shouldn't feel that way. Instead of it being like, maybe take a half-hour nap and see how you feel. Like we're so just like, oh, I have to be on and then off again. With like extremes, it's like you can't have waves even in your day. It's,
right. Like it's okay.
Jenna, you're gonna be a great mom.
I really love children. I
mean that. I wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
Are you sure, AJ? Are you sure, AJ?
Children, so.
I just think that I think having that clear communication, I think you would carry it over with your children, and it would be so beneficial for them because they don't have to figure out these things completely alone, kind of like we had to, in a sense.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like most people have to. It's like these things aren't really taught to us by our parents because our parents weren't taught it, and you know.
Yeah, they just didn't know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Don't worry, MP. I think you'd be a good dad too.
Thanks, AJ. Whenever I find it. What?
I really wish you guys would get married. I
think we would not do
so
that I could just, when I visit MP, I get to hang out with Jenna too.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Anyways, we are coming up on the end of our time here, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to discuss before we cap this off?
Yeah, I just want to say, Jenna, is there anything I would like for you just to mention your coaching, but as well, is there anything for people that are struggling? You know, they want to eat healthy, but they are, thinking about it too much. It's all they think about. They feel as though they don't know what to do, where to start. Do you have anything for someone like that, maybe to point them in the right direction? And we'll definitely leave your info down below as well if anyone's interested in contacting you. But if you could close out with that, I think that'd be a great place to stop.
Yeah. A first step on what to do when you're struggling. I think the first step for me was really recognizing that I was struggling and validating that, like myself, not having anyone else need to validate it. Like, yeah, I talked about it a fair amount initially when I started, telling my friends the extent to which I struggled, but really going through like, how long has this gone on for? And I don't know, like, at least with like, diagnostic criteria of like anorexia, for instance, it's very much like you have to be noticeably underweight or you have to be malnourished. Like, it's like these 3 main criteria. I don't even need to get into that, but I feel like that's so problematic because so many people are like, oh, I don't have an eating disorder. It's not that bad. I'm not like, truly skin and bones. Like maybe they're also overweight and they're like, even more so, that's demonized so much. Like I can't possibly be healthy. What I'm doing is getting me to this level of health, and to just validate like, no, I'm really struggling. It's like, that's the first thing you need to do. And I think you need to lay out how long it's gone on for. I can remember even being in high school and having really, really subtle social anxiety of eating in front of boys that I liked. That's so interesting now looking back on that. Then I was just like, oh, I'm just a little bit nervous, but it was present. And now that I think about it, it's like, oh, that was a really, really subtle thing that I had no idea could, you know, become the crazy snowball that it ultimately became. But if I had recognized maybe back then, like, oh yeah, I had this feeling, and validate that for myself, who knows what have happened. Or as things started to progress within, you know, dieting, or being like, oh, I just want to lose 5 pounds, or oh, I'll be more worthy and attractive and desirable if I'm small again, and you know, all these stories, if I just validated that and really accepted like that's what I was going through, then I could have been in my healing mode. So it's like you need to validate your own difficulty and not need someone else to tell you like, oh, well, you meet these 3 criteria. And also how we focus so much on it being about the body when it's so much about the mindset. Like so many people have disordered eating just in the little things they say. The range to which it exists, the range that they're dealing with it is like, you know, astronomical. When it reaches a problem where it's like affecting how you treat yourself and speak to yourself, like that's where I think I draw the line of being like, this really needs to be addressed and you really need to go in yourself. But yeah, rant was a little, long story short, validate.
That was beautifully said.
That's awesome, Jenna.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thanks, guys. It's fun. We'll do it tomorrow, just not record it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. This isn't what I was expecting for this episode, but it's exactly what I expected. You know, like just us just going with the flow and just doing what we do, you know. So I loved it.
Yeah. And my Instagram is
Jenna, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. And my Instagram is just my name, just Jenna Hathaway with an underscore after the Y. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll put your Instagram down below as well.
Cool.
Yeah, Jenna shares a lot.
Did you have fun, Jenna?
Say that again?
Did you have fun?
Yeah, so much fun. I always have fun talking to you guys.
Same.
I just want to say that Jenna, she does post a lot of great material, great content. A super fun follow. It's always cool to see her perspectives. And I know like over the next couple of weeks, you're going to be talking about nutritionism or something like that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So interesting. That's something at one point and I was like, oh, I could go there. But then I was like,
yeah, right. Well, I feel like we could talk about that. That could be its own episode.
Yeah, we could do that next time.
For sure. Awesome. Well, Jenna, thanks for coming on once again. You're amazing. We love you so much. Awesome. Well, hey, you know what? Stay up, be great. Always keep it 100, baby.
Stay hungry.